Santa Fe, New Mexico, July 17, 1971. 9:47 in the morning. The sky was white with heat, and the dust on Route 14 hadn't moved since the night before. 60 crew members worked the set of the Cowboys, cameras repositioning, equipment cables running across the dry earth, 12 young cast members waiting near the equipment truck for the morning shot to begin. Nobody heard the horses until they were already on the ridge. 10 riders, coming in hard from the north. Red dust rising behind them in still air. Every head on set turned. Equipment stopped. Conversation cut off mid-sentence. Roy Decker, Road Point, 46 years old. Third-generation Santa Fe rancher, 4,200 acres, and a reputation in this county that had never once been challenged. He stopped his horse 20 feet from John Wayne, close enough to be an insult, far enough to feel safe. He studied Wayne's face, his age, the shallow breath he drew in the morning heat, an effort that simply wasn't there 10 years before. Decker glanced back at his riders, let the silence stretch across that set until everyone felt the weight of it, and then turned back. His voice carried without effort. "You're too old to be carrying a gun, Duke. Maybe it's time you let the real men handle things." 9 riders laughed. Crew members stared at the ground. The 12 boys did not move. John Wayne did not reach for the prop gun on his hip, did not raise his voice. He held Roy Decker's eyes with something that was not anger and was not fear, something quieter and far more dangerous than either. The silence that followed was the loudest thing on that road. Have you ever been dismissed by someone who had no idea what you'd already survived? Drop it in the comments below. But nobody standing on Route 14 understood. Not the crew, not the riders, not the 12 boys who would carry this morning with them for the rest of their lives. That John Wayne had known Roy Decker was coming for 3 full days, and he had already decided, down to the last detail, exactly what he was going to do. But July 17, 1971 did not begin on Route 14. It began 7 years earlier on an operating table at Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles, California. October 1964. Surgeons removed John Wayne's entire left lung. The tumor was malignant, caught early enough to save his life, but not early enough to leave him unchanged. Recovery took 8 months. 3 separate physicians told him, in private, that his career in Western filmmaking was finished. The physical demands, horses, heat, altitude, the weight of period costumes under a working sun, required lung capacity he no longer had. Wayne listened to all 3, thanked them, went home, then made 7 more films. By 1971, the evidence was subtle but present. A slight rightward lean when he walked, compensation for the missing lung, breath that came shallower in heat above 90 degrees. He tired faster than he once had. His crew knew it. His directors knew it. Wayne never discussed it, never acknowledged it in any interview. He simply worked around it the way a man absorbs any permanent loss, quietly, without ceremony, and without complaint. The Cowboys was not a random project. Of the 12 scripts sitting on Wayne's desk in early 1971, this was the only one where his character dies. Not in battle, not with glory. Shot in the back by a younger man, in the dirt, without warning. In 47 years of filmmaking, John Wayne had never died on screen. He chose this story deliberately because he understood something about 1971 that he couldn't say out loud. That time had stopped asking his permission, and the only dignified response was to look it straight in the eye. Roy Decker had submitted a competing location bid to Paramount Pictures 6 weeks before filming began. His land bordered the Route 14 property on 2 sides. He offered exclusive access rights for $180,000. Paramount secured the adjacent land independently for $200,000. Decker's bid was rejected without a phone call. He received a standard contract denial letter. In 11 years, Roy Decker had not been ignored by a single person in Santa Fe County. 3 days before the confrontation, Wayne's assistant placed a manila folder on his trailer table. Wayne read every page, set it down, and said 4 words that changed everything that happened on the morning of July 17th. The 4 words Wayne said after reading that folder were simple: pull the survey records. But everything that led to those words began with Frank Weatherby. Wayne's personal assistant had been watching Roy Decker's riders circle the Route 14 perimeter every morning for a week. 4 horses, always from the North Ridge, always at the same hour. It wasn't curiosity, it was surveillance. Weatherby hired a local researcher without telling anyone. 2 days later, a manila folder arrived containing Roy Decker's complete land dispute history in Santa Fe County going back to 1959. 17 boundary claims filed over 12 years. 14 resolved before any court date, not through legal merit, but through the particular kind of pressure that only works on people who can't afford to fight back. 2 ranchers had sold their properties at below market value rather than spend years inside Decker's legal machinery. A small production company filming a beer commercial in 1968 had packed their equipment and left after Decker's men cut their power line on 3 consecutive nights. Nobody pressed charges. Nobody wanted the trouble. Wayne read the folder cover to cover, set it on the table, said 4 words. Then he sat with it alone. That evening at 10 o'clock, Wayne was in his trailer doing the breathing exercises his doctor had prescribed after the surgery: shallow controlled inhale, slow exhale, both hands resting on his knees. 64 years old, 1 lung, a film where his character dies in the second act. And outside, a rancher who looked at him and saw only what was gone: the youth, the full breath, the invulnerability that had never actually been real to begin with. Wayne knew exactly what Decker saw when he looked at him. The mirror wound wasn't the mockery itself. It was the question underneath it. The one Wayne had been carrying privately for 7 years. Was Decker right? On day 11 of production during a lunch break, Tommy Albright sat beside Wayne in the shade of the equipment truck. Tommy was 13 years old from Albuquerque and had the particular honesty of boys that age, who haven't yet learned what questions adults don't want answered. He looked at Wayne directly and asked, "Mr. Wayne, are you scared of anything?" Wayne was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at the boy. "Every day, son. Every single day." Tommy didn't understand, but every person watching this who has ever turned 60 does. On the morning of July 17th, Wayne was at his trailer door at 5 o'clock doing his breathing exercises when he saw the North Ridge. Not 4 riders this time, 10. And Roy Decker was among them personally. Something had changed overnight. Have you ever watched a storm building and known you couldn't stop it? Only decide how you'd stand when it arrived? Tell me below. Because when Decker rode down off that ridge at 9:47, he was carrying something inside his coat pocket that he believed would shut down John Wayne's entire production permanently. It wasn't a weapon. It was something that, in the hands of the right attorney, was far worse than any gun ever made. 9:47. The hoofbeats reached the set before the horses crested the ridge. 10 riders descending Route 14 in a loose arc, Decker at center, coat buttoned despite the heat. 60 crew members stood exactly where they had stopped. No order was given. The air made the decision for them. The line landed exactly as Decker designed it: public, surgical, loud enough for every person on that road to absorb it fully. 9 men laughed. The 12 boys went completely still. Tommy Albright was not watching Wayne's face. He was watching his hands. Wayne's hands did not move. Decker reached inside his coat. Not for a weapon. For paper. 11 pages, notarized the afternoon before in downtown Santa Fe, stamped with the county seal. A boundary dispute claim asserting the Route 14 filming location encroached 40 feet onto Decker land. Under New Mexico Property Statute January 30th, 47, it stated, "Commercial filming constitutes active use of disputed territory, requiring immediate cessation of all production, pending full survey resolution. Effective immediately. $4.2 million in committed production costs. 3 months of work, 200 jobs. Decker dropped all 11 pages in the dirt at Wayne's feet. Maybe if you weren't so old and slow, Duke, you'd have seen that coming. His writers laughed harder than the first time. And then John Wayne bent down, slowly, without expression. 64 years old, one lung, and he bent down in the Route 14 dust and picked up 11 pages of legal documents, stood back up, and read them. Standing in the middle of that road under a white sky, 60 people watching, 9 writers still grinning above him. Every paragraph, all 11 pages. Decker's grin held for about 90 seconds. Then it started costing him something to maintain. Wayne looked up. His voice was completely level. 3 errors in your legal description. Paragraph 4, wrong boundary marker designation. Paragraph 7, you cite the 1962 county survey, but the 1953 federal survey supersedes it under state statute. Paragraph 9, your measurement origin point does not exist on any filed plat in Santa Fe County. He held the papers toward Decker. Your surveyor made 3 mistakes. This won't hold. Decker's attorney, writing third from the left, leaned in and whispered. Decker's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 1 second. Just one. Wayne handed the papers back, turned to director Mark Rydell. Mark, 10 minutes. Back to work. He walked toward the set without looking back. Not performing the exit, just returning to work. This isn't finished, old man, Decker called after him. Wayne, still walking, not turning. For you it is. Nobody cheered, nobody spoke, because 60 people had just watched a man refuse to let a confrontation become what it was built to be. And somehow, that was more devastating than anything they had ever witnessed on a film set. Tommy Albright stood at the edge of that crowd and watched Wayne walk away. The rightward lean, the shallow breath, 64 years visible in every single step. The boy's face held the expression children carry when they witness something true for the very first time, something they have no words for yet, something they take with them silently for the rest of their lives. 2 hours later, Roy Decker came back, this time with the Santa Fe County Sheriff, and this time the legal papers had no errors at all. 2:14 in the afternoon. The Santa Fe County Sheriff served the amended papers on the Route 14 set without ceremony, handed them to production attorney Howard Marks, nodded once, and left. Marks read the filing inside the equipment trailer with director Mark Rydell and John Wayne standing on either side of him. The room was small and very quiet. The amended claim cited a different boundary altogether, one backed by a 1967 county resurvey that Decker's legal team had apparently been holding in reserve, waiting to see whether the first filing would be necessary. No errors this time. Properly notarized. Procedurally clean from the first paragraph to the last. Under New Mexico law, they had 72 hours to vacate the location or face contempt proceedings. $4.2 million in production costs. The 12 boys' school agreements, which had been negotiated across 4 different states, would collapse within a week if the schedule broke. Mark set the papers down, looked at Wayne. Duke, if we shut down 60 days, we lose half the cast schedule. The boys, Wayne held up one hand. Give me the trailer. Frank Weatherby timed it because he had nothing else to do while he waited outside. 4 minutes and 11 seconds of silence. Then 2 phone calls. The first lasted 6 minutes. Weatherby recognized the name. Wayne asked the operator to connect. Marcus Webb, Wayne's personal property attorney in Albuquerque. The second call was shorter. Weatherby could hear only Wayne's side, 2 sentences spoken, a long pause, then 3 words. I appreciate it. The call ended. Wayne came out of the trailer, looked at Rydell. We filmed the afternoon scenes, all of them. Rydell stared at him. Duke, if the sheriff comes back, we film. Something had been decided inside that trailer that went beyond the legal question. Every scene Wayne shot that afternoon, Rydell would tell interviewers years later, was different from anything in the previous 3 weeks of production. Something had burned away, the distance between the actor and the character, the performance and the truth. A man who had accepted what was coming and decided to spend what remained doing something that mattered. The boys on that set were not acting across from a movie star that afternoon. Tommy Albright forgot his line entirely in one scene, not from nerves, but because he was watching Wayne's eyes and could not look away from what he saw there. During a break, Tommy found Frank Weatherby near the equipment truck. "What's Mr. Wayne going to do?" Weatherby watched Wayne walking back toward camera in the late afternoon light. The lean, the breath, the prop gun, 64 years in every step. He thought about it honestly. "Son, I don't know, but I know he's not stopping." Have you ever refused to walk away from something even when everyone around you said it was already finished? Tell me below. At 6:17 that evening, a black sedan pulled into the Santa Fe County Courthouse parking lot. The man inside had received a two-sentence phone call 3 hours earlier from a number he recognized immediately. By 9 o'clock that night, Roy Decker's legal challenge no longer existed. The second phone call Wayne made at 2:17 that afternoon was to Senator Barry Goldwater, a personal friend of 20 years who owed Wayne nothing and helped him anyway. One conversation, one name passed from Goldwater to the New Mexico State Land Commissioner. 1 hour later, a federal assessor arrived in Santa Fe with standing authority to pull historical boundary records going back to the territorial period. At 8:47 that evening, a 1953 federal survey, predating Roy Decker's ownership of the disputed land by 4 full years, was located, certified, and entered into the record. It established the Route 14 eastern boundary with federal precision that no county resurvey could legally override. Under federal primacy law, Decker's 1967 filing was superseded completely. The challenge dissolved without a hearing, without a judge, and without John Wayne raising his voice a second time. Production attorney Howard Marks called Director Rydell at 9:14. "We're clear." Rydell called Wayne. Wayne said one word. "Good." Then he went to sleep. He said nothing publicly, no statement, no press, no acknowledgement that anything had happened at all. The following morning at 5 o'clock, when Decker's lead rider came over the North Ridge for what had become a daily surveillance pass, he found the Route 14 entrance gate standing open. Sitting on the fence post at the edge of the property was a single-prop revolver from the Cowboys. Barrel pointed down, white cloth tied to the handle. An old cavalry signal, "Lay down your arms." The rider stared at it for a long moment, said nothing, turned his horse around and rode back to Decker. Roy Decker never returned to Route 14. He sold 800 acres of Santa Fe land the following year at significantly below market value. He never filed another boundary dispute in Santa Fe County again. 60 crew members saw that prop gun on the fence post. Every single one of them understood exactly what it meant. But the most important part of this story did not happen on that set. It happened 40 years later in a university auditorium in Albuquerque. And it began with a 13-year-old boy who had watched every second of July 17th, 1971, and never once forgot what he saw. The Cowboys was released on February 1st, 1972. For the first time in 47 years of filmmaking, American audiences watched John Wayne die on screen, shot in the back, in the dirt, without ceremony or rescue. Critics expected audiences to reject it. Instead, theaters went silent in a way that no Western had ever produced before, because it didn't feel like acting. It felt like a man who had already made peace with something enormous and had decided to let the camera see it. May 2011. University of New Mexico School of Law Commencement Ceremony, Albuquerque. The keynote speaker was Thomas R. Albright, 53 years old, federal land attorney, 40-year career, the kind of man who wins cases that other lawyers won't take. He stood before 800 graduating attorneys and told them about a morning on Route 14 in Santa Fe. About a 64-year-old man with one lung who bent down in the dust, picked up 11 pages of legal documents, stood back up, and found 3 errors without raising his voice or his heart rate. That afternoon, Albright told them, I learned what the most powerful thing a man can carry actually is. It is not a gun, it is preparation, and the absolute refusal to let someone else's contempt become your truth. John Wayne died on June 11, 1979. Cancer, age 72. He never mentioned Roy Decker in any interview. Some victories don't require an audience. The outlaw laughed because he believed age had stripped John Wayne down to nothing. He was wrong. Age had only removed what never mattered. What remained was everything. Who in your life refused to be diminished? Name them below. They deserve to be remembered.